you have completed 2 Samuel, but we have not completed David's life, because as we move to the book of Kings, again, the book of Kings is divided up 1st and 2nd Kings, but actually it was not 1st and 2nd Kings originally. So by now everyone has this chart, and it's burned into your memory. Samuel, Saul, David, all the way through. 1 Samuel is when Saul is still on the throne. 2 Samuel is when David is on the throne. And you understand that 2 Samuel is divided between chapters 1 to 10, the triumphs of David, and 11, it happened in the spring, and how everything went down to troubles and eventually devolved into kind of final acts and songs of David collected. But it's 1 Kings 1 and 2 that actually finish off the story here. So what I'm going to do is take you to the front flap of 1 Kings. Okay, so in 1 Kings, what I'd like to do is suggest to you that the first 40 years, 1 Kings 1 to 11, is entirely the reign of Solomon, and you understand that 1 and 2, it's still David, but it's heading towards Solomon. David is weak, he's in bed, he's dying, so Solomon becomes the de facto king all the way to 1 Kings 1 through 11, and actually that's broken into several other subparts. So let me just break it out for you. First of all, chapters 1 and 2 get you through David, and this will be Solomon crowned. And that's chapters 1 and 2. It really sets up the background of how Solomon got to be the next king. Okay? And then in 1 Kings, the rest of chapter 2 and 3, you have a very specific kind of opening story of the early reign of Solomon. Do you remember? What's the word, when I ask you for one word on Solomon, what's the one word you would give me that would characterize his life? Wise, wisdom. And that all comes from a story in chapters 2 and 3, and so we'll derive that one together. Now, the good king lasts basically all the way from 4 to 10, and then chapter 11 sort of as the wheels come off and Solomon devolves into a mess. And so we're going to do good king, bad king. Okay? That's supposed to be a crown. Work with me. Okay, and what you have is this is a 40-year, this takes place over a 40-year period. When you get to chapter 11, between 11 and 12, you're going to find out that the whole story, 12 to 16, begins a next chapter of the story. But it's not, this time it's after Solomon. Solomon is ended. And from 12 to 16, you have a divided kingdom where things are broken down. The divided kingdom, by the way, goes from 1 Kings 12 all the way over to 2 Kings. I can never remember this one. I think it's 17. Yeah, it's 17. 2 Kings 17 is all divided kingdom. This is Saul, David, Solomon are what are called the United Kingdom. 40 years, 40 years, 40 years, 120 years of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom ends here. Okay? This is the year 928, and that is the year of the division of the kingdom. Go back 120 years before that, and that's the beginning of Saul's reign. Okay? More or less. From this point on, the divided kingdom goes until what? When does the northern kingdom fall? Israel, 10 tribes in the north. After Solomon dies, they split north and south. When does the north get destroyed? Anybody remember? This is 722-21. And this period of time is a series of kings in north and south. So this will be the divided kingdom, otherwise DK. not Dairy King, okay? All right, so for our purposes, 12 to 16 are the first segment of the divided kingdom, and this is a segment that shows what happens when the kingdom is broken, and it moves from broken to failure. And it highlights a series of stories where it gets so bad that by 1 Kings 15, you have even Jericho being rebuilt. Remember, we were told if Jericho is rebuilt, I'll kill your children. It is absolute, the wheels are coming off. And here, by chapter 17 of 1 Kings, you begin the story, or midway through 16 actually, you begin a story of say 17 to 22, and it's a story of dark and light. Let me see if I can make this a little bit clearer. This is Ahab representing dark, Elijah representing light. And you will have a battle between Ahab and Elijah. Things like Elijah and the prophets of Baal come from this section right here. From this point on, I wonder if we wouldn't be smarter if we sort of close off our thinking right here, because I need to focus on this the rest of today, and I don't want to get too far out here, okay? We're going to spend our time on the 19 kings of the north and one queen and the 19 kings of the south, and we're going to learn about north and south. But for now, can I just segment off and say we want to talk about this period? Inside of this, I want to talk about Solomon being crowned, early reign. If I could do that today, I'll be very happy. If I can do more than that, fine. But coming out of this period, what are the other books that come out? Solomonic books. Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, Song of Songs, which is the hottest hit of Solomon, his favorite song. He wrote over 3,000, so all you have is this one. And it's more than just a song, it's an entire musical. Song of Solomon is actually a musical about physical love, okay? Here's the thing. Yeah, I know, this is the only place you read about breasts in the Bible, so in junior high, all the guys are like, you know. But here's the thing. It's actually a very tender, and it's a very tender story, and it actually shows that God is quite a romantic. And that romance really was initiated by God. It's not something that Hollywood thought up to ruin Christians, okay? Actually, God is a romantic. He loves all this stuff. And so we're going to take a look at Solomon's life in just a few minutes, and then we're going to be taking a look at some of what his writings were. With David, we should have, obviously, the writings of 1st, 2nd Samuel, and what other book? Psalms, okay. Let's take a look for a few minutes at the end of David, the kind of overlap for the end of David and beginning of Solomon. Chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, David is weak and cold. I mean, that really pretty much settles it. I have a note that he was, that based on 2 Samuel 5, we would say he was near 70 years of age. Now, I know that doesn't sound old to you, but that's 100 in biblical terms. I mean, when the average lifespan is 42 to 52 years, 70 is like you're old as dirt, okay? And so he's not only old, it's also the mileage. This boy has put some miles on his body. I mean, ever since he was like shooting rocks at bears to keep them off his sheep, all the way through the dancing around, spear chucking Saul and all the other things, he's been through it. His body's been through it. Verse 1 says, King David was old, advanced in age. They covered him with clothes, but he could not keep warm. So he's got a circulation issue. So his servants said to him, let them seek a young virgin for my lord the king, and let her attend the king and become his nurse, and let her lie in his bosom, that my lord the king may keep warm. So they're just going to warm him up by putting a young girl with him. And verse 3 says, they searched for a beautiful girl throughout all the territory of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was very beautiful. She became the king's nurse and served him, but the king did not cohabit with her. So he was past that point, but he was at the point where she was just keeping him warm at night. Okay? Verses 5 through 10 sort of give you an overview of something. I want you to see what's happening with Adonijah. Adonijah is the son of David with an A name that you haven't been dealing with. Amnon is dead. Absalom is third. Adonijah is the one who is the heir apparent after the death of Amnon. So Adonijah believes he is going to be the successor. But here's the problem. David has promised successor would be who? Solomon. And here's the thing. When you get to the end of David's life, he's done nothing to secure the line. So the way that we talked about him earlier, the way he was kind of like not an engaged dad, that continued. He wasn't engaged enough to prepare a successor for himself. I think part of that is I've come to know with many people who are vastly talented that they have a hard time finding somebody to, like, putting their son in their place or anything, because they all look so much smaller in stature than what they have become. It's important for us to remember that where that person is where we started, not where we ended. Okay, so you have to look at him with different eyes. Take a look at Adonijah, and let's pick up from 5 to 10 a little bit about Adonijah. First, it says, Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself. First thing I know about him, he's presumptuous. He walks around self-promoting. It says, he kept exalting himself. I will be king. So he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen with 50 men to run before him. Do you see 2 Samuel 15 in there again? You see, this is the Absalom school of make yourself look important. You're not king, but what you do is go hire the secret service like Absalom did to make yourself look like you're king. So you put an entourage around you to give the appearance. So let's say it this way. He was not only self-promoting, he was showy. Then it says, his father had never crossed him at any time by asking him, why have you done so? Now you've got to ask the question, by the way, the word I use here is underdisciplined or undisciplined. Why did his dad, after the Absalom story, not pick up on, when your kids have 50 people running around their chariots, something's wrong, do something about it? I think it's interesting that David still hasn't learned his lesson. He still doesn't know. So he never stops and asks him. I think David is weak. I think David is old. And I think that he has not made known a clear suggestion of what's going to follow him. And what's interesting is he looks like he doesn't know what's going on, because over in verse 11, it's going to come to his attention and they're going to say, don't you know what's going on? It appears as though he doesn't have any engagement. Now, something else I can say about him is his father never crossed him. And then it says in verse, middle of verse 6, and he was also a very handsome man, and he was born after Absalom. He's, in fact, the fourth son. However, it's likely he's the oldest surviving son. The others have all died now. And so, as the oldest surviving one, he believes he's the one who should succeed. Solomon is a lot younger than him. So there's no reason that people should be thinking that Adonijah's not going to succeed his father. One of the other things is that he's an attractive young man. He's about 35 years of age. It says, he had conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and Abiathar, the priest, and following Adonijah, they helped him. So he's conniving, but he's sharp enough to get some of the key men in David's staff to go along behind him. I think the reason those men followed him is because David was never clear about his plan. So they were expecting the oldest surviving son to be the successor. This is the normal way it's done. Why would they not think that was the case? I believe that list of men were faithful to David, and they believed the way to be faithful to David was by honoring Adonijah. By the way, Adon is sir, Mr., or like Adonai is Lord, Master, okay? Adoniah, Adon is like the Lord is my master, I am his servant, that kind of thing. Okay, so when we get down to Zadok the priest, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shemaiah, Uriah, and the mighty men who belonged to David were not with Adonijah. There was a group of men who were going to stay with David until David breathed his last. They were not going to take sides in this. They were going to do whatever David told them, and David hadn't told them anything. Some guys assumed who was going to be next. The other guys, they hadn't heard it from Dave, and if Dave didn't tell them, they didn't do anything. Now listen, it says, Adonijah sacrificed sheep and oxen and fatlings by the stone of Zohelet, which is beside Ein Rogel, and he invited all his brothers, king's sons, and all the men of Judah, the king's servants, but he did not invite Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the mighty men, and Solomon his brother. Apparently, Adonijah assumed that there was some kind of power struggle that may come. But Adonijah gets most of the people on his side, and he starts to have a big party. Ein Rogel, by the way, by car is a 3-minute drive from downtown David City. It's not far. It's just, you can actually see the edge. Ein is spring. The Rogel spring is actually not very far from David City. And so he goes down to a place where people are anointed, and he has a big party in hopes that the men will anoint him. Interestingly enough, it's all around water, because meanwhile, back in the city, Solomon will get anointed at the water gate, which is closer to the city at the Gihon Spring than Ein Rogel. I can take you to one place in Jerusalem and point to both of these places. You can see them not one from the other, but from one hill you can see both of them. Let's put it that way. Okay, verse 11 says, Then Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, and said, Have you not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Has he become king? Not yet, but he's about to be. He's about to be coronated and anointed to be king. Nathan the prophet is not there with him, but he knows from the Lord. And so he says, So now, come, please let me give you counsel and save your life and the life of your son Solomon. Why? Because it looks like the other people are siding with David's choice, Solomon, and the only way you know that is because Solomon's not invited to the party. Everybody in the family is but him, and some men who are with David. So it makes you wonder if Adonijah doesn't know that there's a quiet deal in the background. Go at once to King David. Say to him, Have you not, my lord, O king, sworn to your maidservant, saying, Surely Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Behold, while you are still speaking with the king, I will come in after you and confirm your words. It's interesting. Nathan spends the only real appearances that he has in the Bible. He's got a plan up his sleeve, and he's breaking some news to David. That seems to be his whole MO. Right? You are the man. Now he's going to do you go in there and you tell him this, and then I'll come in halfway into it and I'll confirm what you're saying. So Bathsheba went into the king in the bedroom. Now the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was ministering to the king. Bathsheba bowed and prostrated herself before the king, and the king said, What do you wish? She said to him, My lord, you swore to your maidservant by the Lord your God, saying, Surely your son Solomon shall be king after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. It's interesting. He promised it, but then he procrastinated in doing it. It's almost like David didn't want to write his last will and testament because he thought that would mean he would die. There's a lot of people like that, by the way. They won't write their will because they're sure that means they're going to die. Here's what I know. They're going to die, okay? But it would be better if they wrote their will first. That would help. Now, behold, Adonijah is king. And now, my lord the king, you do not know it. He has sacrificed oxen and fatling and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the sons of the king and Abiathar the priest and Joab the commander of the army, but he has not invited Solomon your servant. As for you now, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. You haven't named your successor. Otherwise it will come about as soon as my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon will be considered offenders. Behold, while she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in, told the king, Here is Nathan the prophet. And when he came in before the king, he prostrated himself before the king with his face on the ground. Then Nathan said, My lord the king, have you said Adonijah shall be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne? For he has gone down today, sacrificed oxen, fatling sheep in abundance, invited all the king's sons, commanders of the army, of Abiathar the priest. Behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and they say, Long live King Adonijah! But me, even your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he has not invited. Has this thing been done by my lord the king? And you have not shown your servants who should sit on the throne after my lord the king after him? Then King David said, Call Bathsheba to me. And she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. So apparently she walked in, she said something. Nathan came in, she was dismissed. He then confirms exactly what she's saying. He has her called back in. The king vowed and said, As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from all distress, surely as I have vowed to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, saying, Your son Solomon shall be king after me. He shall sit on my throne in my place. I will indeed do this day. Bathsheba bowed her face to the ground, prostrated herself before the king. May my lord King David live forever. King David said, Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada. And they came into the king's presence. He said to them, Take with you the servant of my lord, and have my son Solomon ride down on my own mule down to the Gihon spring. The word spring isn't there, but that's the water supply next to the city of Jerusalem. That's where a lot of our water comes from today. Okay? The Gihon spring. The word Gihon means gushing, and it's also called the dragon spring in Nehemiah. It is a spring that has a surge in it, so it's a cave that water comes out of that every now and then it has a pressure point where it will go, and as a result they thought there was a dragon in there. Anyway, I don't know that they really thought that, but they called it that. All right, verse 34, Let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him there as king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and say, Long live King Solomon. So essentially you have an anointing going on in Ein Rogel. I want you to take him outside the gate at Gihon, anoint him, blow the trumpets from the royal guard. Then you shall come up after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne and be king in my place. I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and Judah. Benaiah son of Jehoiada answered the king and said, Amen. Thus may the Lord, the God of my lord the king say, As the Lord has been with my lord the king, so may he be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David. That became a formula for ancient blessings, that may your son have even greater than you did. That wasn't a slam, it was actually a way of elevating David. So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, the Cherethites, the Pelethites went down and had Solomon ride on King David's mule and brought him to Gihon. By the way, why do they have mules and not horses? Not only are mules tougher, you got to see the sides of Jerusalem to understand this. Horses want to run, and Jerusalem sits like on hills that are very steep. And so you spend a lot of time kind of navigating around boulders and rocks, and so mules actually are a better deal. Zadok the priest then took the horn of oil from the tent, anointed Solomon, then blew the trumpet, Long live Solomon. And you go all the way down and you hear that the people that went up after him, verse 40, the people were playing flutes and rejoicing with great joy so that the earth shook from their noise, meaning it was so loud you could hear it from a great distance. Verse 41, Now Adonijah and all his guests were there. They heard it as they finished eating, and Joab heard the sound of the trumpet and said, Why is the city making such an uproar? Well, while he was still speaking, behold, Jonathan, the son of Abiathar the priest, came. And Adonijah said, Come in, for you are a valiant man. Bring good news. But Jonathan replied to Adonijah, No, our Lord King David has made Solomon king. The king also sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, Cherethites, Pelethites, and they made him ride on the king's mule. Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king in Gihon. That's the sound that you heard at the end of verse 45. Now look at verse 47. King's servant came to bless our Lord King David, saying, May your Lord make the name of Solomon better than your name, and his throne better than your throne. The king bowed himself on the bed. The king also said, Thus, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted one to sit on my throne today while my eyes see it. So technically at that moment, Solomon is king. David is no longer king. Now, he'll always be called King David, but he's ineffective laying in a bed shivering. Adonijah becomes afraid, And you see in verse 50, he's afraid of Solomon. And David gives instructions to Solomon. These are precious. This is famous last words of Dave, okay? We have his last lyrics, but these are his last words to his son. David's time, chapter 2, verse 1, drew near, bless you. He charged Solomon his son, saying, I am going the way of all earth. I'm facing death. Be strong, therefore, and show yourself a man. Stop and underline the phrase, show yourself a man. I want to make the point in this class, masculinity and femininity are biblical prescriptions, not just cultural ones. That there is a manliness of manhood that is biblical. That there is a femininity for women that is biblical. These are not just cultural ideas. As soon as society gets to say, well, you know, the roles of men and women can be changed from culture to culture, and you really can't say that there's a right one and a wrong one, what you're doing is you're saying that everything can become one thing. One thing I know about our world, they can't stand our differences. They can't. They can't stand them. Now, they already know that we have physical differences, but they can't stand having any other difference. He says, I want you to fulfill God's promise. I want you to mark expectations. Show yourself. Be a man, is what he says. Keep the charge of the Lord your God to walk in his ways. Why? Because real men walk with God first. That's their first call. Step up, verse 3, walk with God. Keep his statutes. Walk in his commands, his ordinances, his testimonies, according to what is written in the law of Moses, that you may succeed in all that you do wherever you turn. Did you notice the number of words that are there? It says his commandments, his ordinances, his testimonies. Remember, there are different words for the law. His commandments, his mitzvot, those are the things God commands you. His ordinances, his statutes. Remember, that's that word chugim. That's the word for engravings, things that never change. How about the one for testimonies? I love that God has different ways of describing the commands that he gave. But then it says, so that the Lord may carry out his promise which he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons are careful of their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne. Now, you also know what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me. Now stop. He says, obey God, walk with God, know what he said. Now, he starts in verse 5, and I want you to circle some names. In verse 5, circle Yoav. Underline in verse 5, Abner, Amasa. Verse 7, circle Barzillai, the man of steel. And circle in verse 8, Shemaiah. Remember I told you Shemaiah is going to come back into the story at the end? This is his final, last words and testament of David. Okay? Now, let's first start with Joab. One of the things that has to happen is David needs to tell Solomon what's unsafe. And Joab is not safe. He said, you also, bless you, know what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Yeter, whom he killed. He also shed the blood of war in peace. What is that? He killed people outside of a war without adjudicating innocence or guilt. There was a place for him to kill, and that was on a battlefield. But in the case of Amasa, he faked dropping his weapon, and without a command, he went and killed them. So he says he shed the blood of war in peace. And he put the blood of war on his belt about his waist and on his sandals on his feet. So in other words, he literally got to the place where he was doing unlawful assassinations and gaining money and prestige by them. That's what he's saying. Why does he tell him that? Joab has been one of his trusted men, and David doesn't trust him. So before his son takes over, he says, I want you to know that this guy you think I trust so much, I don't. He broke the law several times. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm going to give you a general hint in verse 6. Act according to your own wisdom. See, he gave him room. I want you to be a man, but I want you to use your head. Okay? And then, do not let his gray hair go down to Sheol or the grave in peace. In other words, I don't think what he's saying is come up and kill him in his sleep. I think what he's saying is, if you want him to operate in warfare, that's fine, but you need to be wise about this guy. So it may be that you send him back out to war until he's so old that he just dies on the battlefield. Maybe that's the way you do it. It's hard. I'm not telling you exactly how to do it. I'm saying don't give him the keys to your kingdom or you'll lose it. He's not necessarily earned the trust that I have for him, have shown him. Okay, verse 7. Now, on the other hand, show kindness to the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite, the man of steel. Let them be among those who eat at your table, for they assisted me when I fled from Absalom your brother. These guys have proven themselves, their families proven themselves. Keep them next to you. Behold, there is with you also Shemaiah, the son of Gera the Benjamite, from Bahurim. Now it was he who cursed me with a violent curse on the day I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now therefore, do not let him go unpunished. You're a wise man, and you will know what you ought to do, and you will bring his gray hair down to Sheol with blood. In other words, he's not going to die of old age. You'll know what to do. That's really the last words we have of David. I want you to see him as this old quivering godfather. The son is sitting there ready to take over, gives him the ring. You'll know what to do. Take him out. And then he dies. David slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. Bless your little heart. Then the days of David reigned over Israel were 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron. 33 years he reigned in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat on the throne of David, his father, and his kingdom was firmly established. Adoniyahu, or Adonijah, the son of Haggith, came from Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, and said, do you come peacefully? She said, peacefully. Then he said, I have something to say to you. And she said, speak. So he said, you know that the kingdom was mine, and all Israel expected me to be king. However, the kingdom has turned about and become my brother's, for it was from the Lord. I want you to notice what he does. Adonijah's in trouble. He's now going out to throw himself a party. He actually expresses out loud, you know that I was the oldest son, right? And that the kingdom was all but mine. And now, somehow, the Lord has made it be something else. Now, I am making one request of you. Do not refuse me. She said, speak. Then, please speak to Solomon the king, for he will not refuse you, that if you may give me Abishag the Shunammite as a wife. Why does he want Abishag the Shunammite as a wife? What does he know that Bathsheba hasn't put together? Who's Abishag the Shunammite? She's the bed warmer from the beginning of the story, right? David's nurse, but also David's only concubine after he set aside all the concubines. Now, he didn't actually cohabit with her, but that doesn't mean she didn't qualify as a concubine. Okay, so the bottom line is, what is it that Adonijah is trying to do? He's essentially Prince Adonijah, older brother, crown prince, older brother of the king. However, he's trying to take the next generation away from Solomon. Instead of it being Solomon's, he could then claim, he could impregnate her and claim that's David's next son. And since that son would be young, but older than Solomon's, he's going to try to get he's jockeying for position for his seed to be on the throne. That's what he's trying to do. Bathsheba doesn't put it all together, showing that it's not always women who are the more conniving in the text, right? Bathsheba said, very well, I will speak to the king for you. So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah. And the king rose to meet her, bowed before her, sat on his throne. Then he had a throne set for the king's mother, and she sat on his right. So she's given a place of elevation. Then she said, I am making one request of you. Do not refuse me. And the king said, ask my mother, for I will not refuse you. Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah your brother as a wife. King Solomon answered and said to the mother, and why are you asking Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him also the kingdom, for he is my older brother. Even for him, for Abiathar the priest, and for Joab the son of Zeruiah. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, may God do so to me and more if Adonijah has not spoken this word against his own life. He said, this is a plot. You think that he doesn't know what he's doing? Mom, you're getting played. This is about our family. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me and set me on the throne of David my father, who has made me a house as he promised, surely Adonijah shall be put to death today. So King Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he fell upon him so that he died. It does not mean he fell upon him. It means he killed him, okay? Then to Abiathar the priest, the king said, go to Anathoth to your own field, for you deserve to die, but I will not put you to death at this time, because you carried the ark of the Lord God before my father David, and because you were afflicted in everything with which my father was afflicted. So Solomon dismissed Abiathar from being priest to the Lord in order to fulfill the word of the Lord, which he had spoken concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh. It's interesting because the writer of 1 Kings picks up on an old promise that the house of Eli would be stripped of their titles. And it's out of an entirely different context, but nevertheless, God uses it to bring it around, and somebody remembers and inserts into the text, hey, that's because of what God had said. It's his mom. Yeah, it's just like, oh, mom, yes, whatever you need. Well, whatever you need, except for if you like want my throne or a new chariot or whatever, He's thinking she wants jewelry, money, stuff. Oh yeah, no problem. He's just been saddled with millions, okay? He's kind of looking at it like, yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, no, you don't want that. Trust me on that one. That one's a totally bad one. It's amazing to me that somebody needs to write down to do the story of Bathsheba. One of you ladies, you need to go back. She is not a conniving person. In fact, she gets played so easily here that she's not catty at all. I actually think that she has a very beautiful, accepting, loving nature. And I don't know how that plays into the story of her first rendezvous with David. But I think it's interesting. I think you could write some interesting fiction on it and kind of, if you get famous, send a check. Okay, so where are we? Where was I? I forget what I'm doing here. 27? Oh yeah, 27. 28. Now the news came to Joab, for Joab had followed Adonijah, although he had not followed Absalom. Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. Look at that. What's he doing? What were the horns of the altar for? It was like base. It's like you're safe if you touch that, and then it allows you to be transported to one of the cities of refuge, which then you remain in place in the city of refuge until either you're cleared of your charges, or what? When do you get to go home? When the next high priest dies. So chances are good that you may live to go home, right? So he goes running for base. Why is he running for base and touching the horn of the altar? He doesn't want to die, but that's for manslaughter. What does it not cover? It doesn't cover murder, but we already know that he didn't drop the sword. He actually went through the motion so he could kill Amasa, and it was homicide. You can't use base for homicide. So as a result, that's the story. It says, let me see if I can find exactly. It was told King Solomon that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord. Behold, he is beside the altar. Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada and said, go fall on him. Go kill him anyway. Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, thus the king has said, come out. But he said, no, for I will die here. Benaiah brought the king words again, saying, thus spoke Joab, and thus he answered me. King said to him, well, do as he's spoken. Kill him right there. Okay, if that's what he wants, just do it. And bury him, that you may remove from me and from my father's house the blood which Joab shed without cause. Why? What is verse 31 in reference to?
Him killing Amasa.
Yes, he's now erasing the blood that was taken without cause, but what happens when that blood is not avenged? I'm thinking particularly of chapter 21 of 2 Samuel. What happens is you end up with people who think it's unrighteous and people who end up embittered, like you had Shemaiah, right? He's upset because of all the people the Gibeonites had killed because things didn't get settled. He says, I want you to settle this at the beginning of my reign. I don't want this. Kill who you have to kill, get this done, because I want to start my reign and I want it all adjudicated. He's not doing wrong. He's doing what needs to be done in order to clean up the kingdom and get everything taken care of. So this is, if there's an evil judge, get the judge out. If there's a bad cop, get him off the force. Deal with it, whatever has to happen, and clean it all up from the beginning. Then it says, so shall their blood return on the head of Joab and on the head of the descendants forever. But to David and his descendants and his house and his throne, may there be peace from the Lord forever. Then Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up and fell upon him and put him to death, and he was buried at his own house in the wilderness. Then the king appointed Benaiah the son of Jehoiada over the army in his place. And the king appointed Zadok the priest in the place of Abiathar. So essentially, King Solomon moves all the key players around him, shuffles the cabinet, and gets people that are directly loyal to him, that had shown loyalty to his father, but were now invested in him. So everything from this point on, well, we've got one more person. We've got to take care of Shemaiah. After we bump off Shemaiah, then we've got the whole place clean. From verses 36 to 46, this is how Solomon decided to bump off Shemaiah, the stone thrower and curser of David. Okay? So this is how hecklers die in the end. It says, the king sent and called for Shemaiah and said to him, build for yourself a house in Jerusalem and live here. Do not go out from there to any place. For on the day you go out and cross over the brook Kidron to go to the Mount of Olives, you will know for certain that you will die. Your blood shall be on your own head. Shemaiah then said to the king, your word is good. As my lord the king has said, so your servant will do. So Shemaiah lived in Jerusalem many days. So he says, I want you to build a house here in town. I want you to stay here in town, and I don't want you to leave town. If you leave town, you're dead. Not because of old things you did, but because I have told you you can't leave town. In other words, he puts another rule on him and says, do it or don't. If you don't, you're dead. It's not about the old days, it's about now. This is the wisdom of Solomon. So, but it came about at the end of 3 years that 2 of the servants of Shemaiah ran away to Achish, son of Maachah, king of Gath. And they told Shemaiah, saying, behold, your servants are in Gath. All we know about Shemaiah is that he will try to ingratiate himself to a leader to his face, but he allowed bitterness to get in his heart. He screamed at David. Then he turned around, and now apparently the guys who work for him don't like him very much. He's not a good boss. He's not a good slave owner. And so some of his slaves take off. Shemaiah arose and saddled his donkey and went to Gath to Achish to look for his servants. And Shemaiah went and brought his servants from Gath. It was told Solomon that Shemaiah had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned. See, Solomon wisely made a simple rule for him and said, you know, I know this guy. He's not going to be able to live within the rules. All I have to do is make one rule. If you do this one time, you're dead. I don't have to go back and dig up any old claims. I can just make one recorded rule, and then you will break the law. When you break the law, you're dead. So the king sent and called for Shemaiah and said, did I not make you swear by the Lord and solemnly warn you, saying, you will know for certain on that day you depart and go anywhere, you shall surely die? And you said to me, the word which I have heard is good. Why then have you not kept the oath of the Lord and the command which I have laid on you? The king also said to Shemaiah, you know all the evil which you acknowledge in your heart, which you did to my father David. Therefore the Lord shall return your evil on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever. So the king commanded Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he went out and fell upon him so that he died. And here's the summary statement for the whole first 2 chapters. Thus the kingdom was established in the hands of Solomon. Now, Solomon's rule begins in effect long before this, but everything's getting sorted out until the end of chapter 2, and now it's his rule. And the important thing for you is that as we begin the good years of Solomon, you get a good sense that everything's clean. He starts clean.